Hello guys and gals, me Mutahar, and today I want to remind you, never connect Windows XP, Vista, Windows, I think 7 is safe. Don't connect old Windows installations to the internet, because you can be hacked in literal minutes, ladies and gentlemen. And if you're wondering, whoa, what if I don't click on a link? Boys, just by connecting to the internet, you can get hacked. Now, this video is going to be a little bit of, I guess, demystification, but a couple days ago I saw a creator known as Eric Parker who made a video titled, "What Happens If You Connect Windows XP to the Internet in 2024?" Now, I guarantee you a lot of you guys watching here probably have never even thought of connecting older Windows installations to the internet. I mean, there's not much you can do with Windows XP these days, so why would anybody connect themselves to the internet? Well, there are a lot of places in the world where people don't have the most up-to-date gamer gear and computers out there. And there are still people somewhere in the world probably using Windows XP, okay? There's probably a grandma sitting somewhere out there in the world logging into the old MIRC, connecting to other gilfs on the internet just to play some bridge over Windows XP, all right? Pretty extreme example, probably not even healthy there, but there are probably people that have some Windows XP servers sitting around somewhere too. Now, for this to work, you have to expose your internet to Windows XP in such a way that many people are actually not able to do so anymore these days without actually trying. So to understand how internet works, most of you guys are connecting your computer or your phones or whatever to wireless routers or routers in general. Now, routers connect to your modem, and that modem connects to the internet. Now, already in that span, there's something known as a firewall, okay? Now, firewalls are basically like borders. You know how you cross the US-Canada border? You know, you come across a border agent, they ask you a few questions. They basically control the ingoing and outgoing of your computer to the big, bad, scary Wild West internet out there, okay? Without a firewall, you're effectively not having any border, and sometimes errant stuff gets in and out. Now, I've talked about why I don't really care about antiviruses, just because I have something known as common sense. But when you connect something as old as Windows XP, which has 20 years of vulnerabilities to the internet, you probably should have a fucking antivirus. Now, watching Eric Parker's video, what he basically did was create a virtual machine that was connected entirely to the internet by itself, okay? Meaning that it was a direct connection to the actual internet right there and then. And beyond all of it, what he did was he basically let the system cook for 10 minutes, meaning that he walked away, waited 10 minutes, and all of a sudden, a bunch of Russians were inside his actual system. Now, if you watch his video, you can see right over here that he's got a bunch of actual executable files. One of them being ftp.exe, meaning that somebody, and not him, is getting access to his files on his Windows XP system. In fact, what is actually wild in this situation too is if you look inside his actual user directory, you can find out that without him even doing anything, a hacker had created what appeared to be another user account known as admin A. Now, in this situation, what was effectively going on was somebody was creating a new account, getting access to his file system, and downloading whatever. And because of connecting to the internet, he had found some random actual, processes opening up. Processes like conehose.exe, which led to him finding an address leading all the way to the Russian Federation. So here you can see kr1s.ru:1041, okay? So that actually ended up going back to a private asshole in the Russian Federation, all right? So yeah, connecting Windows XP to the internet without any form of protections is insane. Now, inside Eric's video, what he did was he turned off the firewall, which probably didn't really do much considering the Windows firewall wasn't updated at all. Now, this led to a bunch of news media kind of looking at this and saying, boys, if you ever think of running XP without anything on the internet, you are setting yourself up for disaster. Now, to give you an idea, Eric's video involved a lot of actual case examples. Now, this is what Windows XP looks like with all of its features turned off and connected to the internet. So here I have a Windows XP virtual machine, which again, I have it directly connected to the internet as well. And of course, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ping Google just to show you that I'm connected. And as you can see, I am connected, I am pinging. But one thing important over here is I am also connected behind a router. So here you can see 192.168.51. This is my actual router at my place. Now, had I decided to follow Eric's example and take this directly to the internet, which is easily done by bridging the connections under a virtual machine, that would cause the same shit to happen to the system. Now, this Windows installation has basically been connected to the internet for an hour and a half, and nothing has happened in this situation because there have been actual firewalls and protections at the hardware level, keeping my Windows installation safe. Now, even with all of the Windows defense basically taken down, everything over here is still hunky-dory, meaning that if you wanted to connect Windows XP to the internet, you still actually can. In fact, what's wild is some websites at least still work. Like, you can go to google.com and actually still search for Windows XP antivirus. Let's see if we can even like open up any page outside this. When you send information to the internet, it might be possible for others to see that information. Yeah, I know. Oh, I can download AVG? Oh, hell yeah. Oh, no, we can't access it. The browser is so fucking outdated. XP antivirus in 2023? Bros, who's actually... You can't even browse Reddit, dude. That's why people update Windows. They can't access anything. Now, I decided to check Eric's, testing out with further operating systems. I even went all the way up to Windows Vista, which I personally think is one of the best Windows operating systems to ever grace the world. Unfortunately, in Windows Vista's case, it doesn't seem like it faces the same fun hacker epidemic that Windows XP and previous Windows installations up to 2000 feel. So again, certain versions of Windows are a little more susceptible, obviously certain ones aren't. But the reason why Eric's video worked really well was if you actually look at Windows XP's history, every operating system goes through something known as an end of life, okay? So in this situation, Windows XP had its support end on April 8, 2014, which meant, according to Microsoft, there will be no more security updates for Microsoft's XP operating system. So again, to give you an idea, most Windows operating systems, as old as they get, have their end of life situation drop in. As far as Windows 10 goes, which a lot of people are still actually on, will end its support in October 2025. So October 14th, next year, okay? So around the time we're all playing Grand Theft Auto 6, Microsoft will no longer provide security updates or any tech support for Windows 10. But they do recommend you move to Windows 11. Now, for anybody who's using a computer, there's no reason why you shouldn't ever update your system and keep it relatively updated in general. Unless you actually need an older version of an operating system for a program that's never been updated, you should always keep everything pretty much up to date. Simply because the reason why Eric's video is as cool as it is because actual hackers are looking constantly for Windows XP on the internet. So to give you an idea of how this occurs, somebody uses a search engine like Shodan, for instance, which allows you to look for Windows XP installations and systems sitting outside on the open internet. So in a lot of cases, you can see IP addresses from, China and Shenzhen, where they detected Windows XP Service Pack 2. Now again, this is a search for just Service Pack 2. And the more you go down, you'll find that a lot of places, typically in Russia or China, have Windows XP still in active use. For instance, one IP that tripped the flag over here for Windows XP Service Pack 2 belonged to the Institute for Nuclear Research of the... Ooh, that's not good. I'm pretty sure they're going to be fine. It's all safe over there. A lot of places in the world use older-ass operating systems, okay? So what will happen is a hacker will search the internet for boxes that exist, and if they find one that is basically accessible, they will launch every possible exploitation at it and then gain control of it. Now, one thing that I want to actually bring up is there are actually large organizations that still use Windows XP. It's not surprising. For instance, you might have read that the United States military uses Windows XP, and that's not a shock to anybody. For instance, the US military works on very, very, very critical things, and they work with life and death. And when they create chains of processes and software and hardware, Windows XP was at one point an actual critical component of it. And instead of updating and dealing with breaking something else, especially when you need that software or hardware or piece of technology to work at any given moment, the Army will most likely make sure that it stays Windows XP. And it's not because they don't have intelligent people working there in the military, they absolutely do. It's just the reality of it is this is very critical and they need to make sure things work as they are intended. Maybe updating to like Windows 10 or Windows 11 or anything, or Linux can maybe cause more issues than one would expect. Maybe the software that they need Windows XP to run on, maybe that can't be updated. Maybe that can't be supported. Maybe they can't work a deal out with the people writing stuff for that. So you have to think of all of these things as you're updating chains of hardware and processes. And yes, there is a lot of money that goes into making sure Windows XP is functional for the military up until 2024. Now, when I showed you end of life, that's end of life for you and me. But see, the Army can spend up to $30.8 million reportedly to make sure Windows XP, 2003 Office, Exchange, and Windows Server are actually working, meaning they get access to security patches while the rest of the world really doesn't. And this would be pretty standard for the Chinese military or the Russians or really any large-scale group that is using this kind of software that needs to make sure things work. They'll work out deals with Microsoft, really anybody, to make sure that this software will work until the foreseeable future. And if they can update down the road to like Windows 10 or Windows 11 or whatever, then they will probably consider it. But for now, $30 million for the United States military is fucking chump change. And they'd be far willing to pay that than break something in the process that may end up costing them a lot more money down the road. Remember, military contracts are huge for a reason. So once you find a whole slew of addresses, this is effectively low-hanging fruit. You can take over these computers to serve as part of a botnet or really any other nefarious purpose a hacker has cooked up in their head. Now, once you find an actual service like this, there are over 20 years of security vulnerabilities for Windows XP that exist. And so what'll happen is a hacker will effectively launch a tool that exists out there anyways, and these tools are downloaded in various penetration testing distros like Kali Linux. So Metasploit, for instance, they'll find any exploit that exists for Windows XP. And again, remember, the last security update was like 2014. So since 2014, Windows XP specifically, from what I understand, has had its source code leaked. Tons of actual new bugs have been found. Enough to the point that since Microsoft doesn't care about patching and updating it, these hacks will stay forever. So if you have even the most updated Windows system out there, the XP, the most secure system imaginable, you probably still have an exploit that is out there, connected to the internet, and being abused by a hacker. Now you might ask, but Muda, why can't Microsoft just patch one of those exploits, right? I mean, people still use XP. Look, it's unrealistic to expect any company, okay, whether it be Apple, whether it be any Linux maintainer, or Microsoft, to keep all their systems up to date. Look, at the end of the day, they've made so many versions of Windows, all the way from Windows 1.0 all the way to 2.11, where trying to make sure all these security updates are there is impossible. You have to have so much staff on retainer and people working for, again, like what, 1% of people in the world, maybe even 1%? So it's not really worth it for Microsoft. In general, if you want to stay safe, update your operating system, okay? That's pretty much the general advice. Now again, going back to, the Windows 10 end of life, obviously, Microsoft is kind of hastening people updating to more recent operating systems as far as it seems to me. But generally, that's just the idea they have. They want you to use the new stuff because it's just easier for them to maintain 1 or 2 operating systems versus like fucking 20, okay? That's basically the idea. So when a hacker exploits a Windows XP box, they will then launch everything imaginable to gain persistence, gain control, and in Eric's case, when he had ftp.exe running, they're not only trying to take over your box for nefarious purposes, but if they can steal all your information while doing so, that's just the cherry on top. Now, obviously, if you have any form of protections, even if you go back to the ad block video where I showed you how to set up network-wide ad blocking, all these things add up to protect you from hackers in general. Look, Windows XP, again, this is connected for over 2 hours at this point. This box is still safe. Having the most base level of connections gives you actual security. But of course, in Eric's case, when he was making his video, he connected an unsecured box right to the internet, basically turning it into the nicest access point for a lot of these script kiddies and entry-level Russian hackers that you would find sitting on the internet, constantly prying for any weakness that would exist. Now, is using Windows XP unsafe? No, if you want to relive the days of nostalgia, you absolutely can. Just run this thing under a virtual machine, confined within a network, running behind a router, and at that point, you will be the safest Windows XP user currently on the internet. But it is a fun experiment that Eric showed to show you how hackers pry for weaknesses on the internet. If you have Windows XP, hell, if you have Windows 2000, Windows NT, fucking Millennium Edition, 98 if that thing still even has some functioning internet connectivity left, then all of those things are ripe to grab. And it's not just Windows that's the case for this. I would wager that if you connected older versions of Mac OS X, or even older systems, or older versions of Linux, older packages, you might be just as susceptible as Windows XP users are in general. Again, the whole point of this is to just keep your shit updated, and then you'll never have to worry about this, okay? So for anybody thinking, damn, Windows XP is just dangerous to use, basic protections will keep you safe. Eric's video was designed in a manner to show you exactly how unsecured you can be, which isn't too far off from how people, again, once connected their actual systems to the internet in general. But yeah, don't connect old Windows to the internet, okay, directly. That's a fucking recipe for disaster. If you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike it if you dislike it. I am out.